Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. The wind off the Pacific kicked dust across Point Mugu firing range and pushed the smell of hot brass into the air. I kept my head down, my clipboard tucked to my chest, and waited for the last crack of gunfire to fade. Range clear, someone called, and the echo bounced off the low hills behind the targets. My cue. I jogged the lane, swapped out shredded silhouettes, and stapled fresh paper to the splintered posts. No one looked twice. That was the point. Interns came and went at Naval Base Ventura County. We carried water, rolled cables, typed data, and stayed out of the way. I had gotten very good at being out of the way. From the catwalk of the control shed, a figure in wraparound ballistic glasses tracked the line. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Lieutenant James Harrington had that kind of presence where rooms corrected themselves without him saying a word. I pretended not to notice him while my brain did what it always did, followed angles, counted beats between reloads, mapped movement like a quiet puzzle. Systems make sense if you watch long enough. I finished the last target, brushed grit off my cargo pants, and turned. Harrington stepped into my lane. Up close he was taller than I expected, sun-dark, expression unreadable. I froze, running a mental audit of everything I might have done wrong. He slid the M4 from his shoulder, checked the chamber, and held it out butt first. "Take it," he said, steady and calm. My mouth went dry. "Sir, I'm just, take it." He shifted aside, clearing my sightline to the paper I'd just stapled. The range got quieter in a way that isn't actually quiet. Boots stopped. Conversations clipped off. Even the gulls seemed to hang midair. It was heavier than memory. My father's old voice floated up from some place I keep close and private: safety. Stance. Breathe. Don't yank, press. I set my feet, shoulder width, stock nested tight, cheek on the comb, front sight crisp. Inhale. Exhale half. Hold. Press. The shot punched center mass with that clean, glass-breaking snap. Someone whistled under their breath. I didn't look away from the front sight. Two more. Tight group. Then I eased the selector, safed it, and handed the rifle back. Harrington didn't smile. His eyes did a fraction. "Where'd you learn?" "Home," I said. "My dad." He nodded like that made a pile of things add up. "Again tomorrow." He slung the rifle and walked, just like that. A couple of SEALs traded a glance I couldn't read. Reyes tipped a chin at me like a quiet good job. Knox looked like he wasn't convinced but was willing to be. Brooks, arms crossed, studied me the way range staff study a misfeed, curious, skeptical, waiting to see if it repeats. That night the base settled into its usual hum, generators and ocean mixing into white noise. I lay on a thin mattress in the intern quarters, staring at the ceiling tiles, replaying the moment in a loop I couldn't shut off. Not the shot. The handoff. Nobody gives you a lane here without a reason. He saw something. Or he was testing a theory. Either way, the door I'd kept shut on certain parts of my life had cracked open, and light was coming through whether I liked it or not. Dawn carried that cold snap you feel even in California before the sun burns the edge off. I laced my boots and walked the gravel to the range early, not scheduled to touch a single target stand, just wanting to be where the noise makes sense. The team was already moving through dry runs. Harrington clocked me, said nothing, and went back to work. When the first drill ended, he waved me up with 2 fingers, the way you call a player from the bench. No instructions. He set the rifle in my hands like we'd already agreed who I was today. The second string wasn't luck. The third wasn't either. After, he handed me a tablet and pointed at the telemetry page for the quadcopters that relayed overhead position to visor HUDs. If it stutters, call it, he said. If you can fix it, fix it. No fanfare. Responsibility handed over in the same tone as, range is hot. I stood where Brooks told me to stand and watched packets stream green, 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 a brief amber hiccup, then green again after I reset a process that had hung. When the team came offline, Harrington asked, catch it? I nodded once. Good, he said. Stay close. That was all. But it wasn't nothing. At lunch I ate on the tailgate of a truck and kept my eyes on the hill lines beyond the berms. Reyes dropped beside me, boot heels knocking dust. You shoot quiet, he said. That a compliment? It is today. Knox passed without stopping. We'll see if it holds, he said, not unkind, just blunt. Brooks handed me a rag and a stripped bolt carrier group. Field strip, reassemble, no pieces left on the table, he said. I did it from muscle memory I hadn't used in years. He grunted. Again. We did it 3 more times, then he took the parts back like he was filing a note only he'd get to read. By evening, the sun burned the range gold and long shadows stretched like lanes of their own. Harrington stood with me at the edge of the gravel while the others packed gear. You didn't ask why, he said. About the rifle. Didn't feel like my place, I said. You didn't blink, he said. Most people blink. I looked at the targets pocked with clean holes. I've spent a lot of time watching. He nodded once. Come back tomorrow. He let that hang a beat. We'll see how far you can go. I watched him walk away, then looked down at my hands, feeling the phantom weight of the rifle and the heavier weight of being seen. I was ready to come back tomorrow for whatever came next. Tomorrow arrived cold and fast, the kind of gray-blue morning that makes metal sweat. I beat the sun to Point Magoo and waited by the storage cage until Harrington keyed it open and handed me the tablet like it already belonged in my hands. No hello. No lesson. Same deal, he said. If it stutters, call it. If you can fix it, fix it. Reyes jogged past with a grin. Knox gave me a look that said prove it, again. Brooks pointed me to a spot beside the control shed where the signal stayed clean. Drills kicked off in sharp bursts. The quadcopters climbed and settled into their patterns over the kill house. For 10 minutes, everything stayed green, then a telemetry lane flickered amber, dropped, and tried to reroute. I isolated the process, killed a hung subroutine, and repointed the stream before the HUDs even lost their breadcrumbs. Good catch, Brooks said, all business. Harrington didn't break stride, he just adjusted the team's pace like the system and I were parts of the same machine. Between runs he put a hand out, palm up. I didn't need him to say it. I passed the M4, we checked it together, and he stepped aside. Breathing, stance, press, clean string, tight group. The whispers died quicker this time. Knox studied the holes as if they'd confess a trick. Still not luck, Reyes muttered, and I felt the heat in my face that came from something other than the sun. After lunch, Harrington changed the channel. You want in, he said, you don't just lift the light stuff. He pointed to a chalkboard list stenciled resilience gauntlet. Not official training, he said, but real enough. Scaled pain with purpose. You can walk when you want, Brooks added. But don't say yes unless you plan to finish. My chest tightened in that old way that felt like fear wearing ambition's jacket. I'm in, I said before my brain could vote the other way. It started simple, a mile warm-up that lied about being warm, then tire flips heavier than they looked, sand trying to steal my shoes every time the rubber hit. Rope climbs burned the inside of my arms, burpees hammered breath out of my ribs. They kept it moving to keep you from thinking. Ice bath next, chest deep, steel pipes overhead to prevent you from cheating. The water came up like knives. My lungs panicked, my vision tunneled, and then something stubborn and unreasonable held me still. 30 seconds. 40. A minute. When I climbed out, my hands didn't feel like mine. Harrington crouched, stopwatch ticking. He didn't say good job. He didn't have to. Next, I said through a mouth that didn't quite work, and Reyes barked a laugh that wasn't unkind. Weighted carries chewed my traps, log lifts shook everything between my ears, low crawl under wire ground sand into my skin. Halfway through, my legs were preaching the gospel of quitting. The third name on the board tapped out, then the fourth. Knox and I kept moving. He was faster. I was quiet. The sun slid toward late afternoon, shadows growing long and sharp, the kind that make time feel thinner. My calves cramped on the sled drag, and the world narrowed to the next step, then the next. I remembered my dad's voice like a hand on my back. Pain is information. Keep going until you finish. Final event, sandbag run through the obstacle loop. I hoisted the bag, sloppy at first, then tighter as I found a groove. A berm caught my boot, sent me skidding. The bag tumbled, rolled down the slope, and sat there like a dare. For a second, one clean, treacherous second, I let myself imagine staying where I'd fallen. Then I stood. I limped down, threw the bag up, and started again. I didn't sprint. I didn't make it pretty. I made it forward. When I crossed the line, the range was louder in silence than in gunfire. A few claps, scattered at first, then a run of palms that stopped before it turned into anything like applause. Knox finished a beat later and bent double, hands on knees, breath tearing out of him. He looked at me and shook his head, half a smile in it. Okay, he said, which was more than enough. Harrington walked over and offered a hand. I took it. The pull to standing hurt in a way that said alive. You didn't wait for permission, he said, eyes steady. You didn't break. Brooks tossed me a towel and a bottle. Reyes slid onto the concrete block beside me like we were old friends who'd done this yesterday. You're out of your mind, he said. I mean that in a good way. The pain didn't end when the clock did. It spread, dulled, settled, and then left behind a clean outline of something new. People who used to look through me started nodding when I passed. The jokes shifted from intern to we. The next day, Harrington brought me into the Port Hueneme war room. Big screens, clean air, the quiet of thinking places. He gave me a seat at the table that was not against the wall. Watch, he said. And if you see something, say it. I watched. Entry routes. Sweep patterns. Timing marks that looked tight until you ran them against camera angles and human speed. There, a 6-second blind spot in the southeast corner of the rotation. Someone slips, I said, marking the grid. A visiting officer waved it off without looking up. We'll run it my way. Harrington didn't change expression. Run it, he said. They ran it. It failed exactly where it was going to fail. Dust. Reset. The officer's face cooled 2 shades. He didn't apologize. He didn't have to. Harrington tapped the screen. We patched that today. He didn't say who found it. He didn't need to. Brooks gave me a slow nod like a stamp you can't buy. We walked out into late light. The ocean was a thin silver line beyond the roofs. Harrington handed me a folder with a tab that read Civilian Integration, Advanced. This isn't a promise, he said. It's a door. I'll sponsor if you want to step through. I held it, the paper warm from his hand, and felt the same weight I'd felt on the range the first time he held out the rifle. Not metal this time. Opportunity. You'll get tested harder than today, he said. Different kind of hard. I looked up. Good, I said, voice steadier than my legs. Because I'm not here to hold clipboards. He almost smiled. Tomorrow, he said. Another step. I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. I knew exactly where I'd be when the sun came up. I was on the gravel before first light, breathing that cold, clean air that slices your lungs and wakes up the part of you that says show up. Harrington met me at the perimeter, no small talk, just a nod toward Port Huenemi's glass doors. Inside, the war room lights were soft and clinical. He slid the folder across the table again, the one stamped civilian integration, advanced, like the range handoff all over, except made of paper and consequences. If you want it, sign it, he said. I'll back you. I didn't pretend to deliberate. I put my name where the line told me to. He took the folder back with a short, approving breath. Van's outside at 0600 tomorrow. Pack like you're staying a while. Tomorrow arrived as a matte black van and a quiet driver who checked my badge once and said nothing the rest of the trip. The facility sat inland, colder in personality than the base, anonymity engineered on purpose. Intake moved fast. They collected my phone, issued a badge, stamped a schedule on my tablet that looked like a dare. Day 1 was data interpretation under fatigue, 6 hours of live-fed battlefield sim with deliberate flaws buried in the noise. The point wasn't getting perfect, it was catching the wrong fast enough to keep it from becoming fatal. I locked on, tracked errant latencies, flagged a spoofed signature, and built an efficient triage habit: trust the model until it lies, then take the wheel. I finished in 4 hours, not because I sprinted, but because I stopped arguing with the problem and solved it. Day 3 went for the mind. Controlled disorientation, sleep cuts, white rooms, questions that doubled back on themselves to see if you would. A lot of smart people talk themselves into holes under pressure. I kept the answers plain and short and saved my oxygen. A candidate 2 doors down rang the bell and asked out, another got loud, then quiet, then was gone by dinner. At night I lay still and counted the hums in the ductwork until my heart stopped trying to jump fences. Week 2 pushed us into teams, mixed civilians and uniform. I didn't introduce myself with a resume. I asked 2 questions and then handed out jobs based on what people were good at, not what they liked. We ran 4 missions. 3 were clean. The 4th failed because I trusted a sensor suite that lied by half a second. The instructors didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Fix your trust model, one said, tapping a stylus against the glass. I did. It stung in the useful way. Not everything was tidy. Midweek they loaded a hostage rescue tree with randomized faces, just photorealistic enough to make your stomach think they were real. One of the hostages had my father's jawline and the same set to the eyes, stern, patient, impossible to impress. I stopped breathing for 3 beats. In that pause, the sim killed 2 friendlies. I forced air back in, cleared the room in the right order, and finished 1 casualty down. Later, alone in the dorm, I stared at the water stain on the ceiling until it turned into the old ranch fence, then my father's boots in winter mud, then nothing at all. I whispered into the dark like I was on the old range again, I'm still here. I'm still moving. By week 3 the instructors stopped explaining and started watching. They'd walk past the glass and make a note, not about the outcome, but about how you move toward it. We got a weather-ugly ambush sim with incomplete intel, something you can't spreadsheet your way through. I pitched a double flank with an AI decoy to pull the first volley wide. Risky, untested. A major raised an eyebrow. You own it if it fails. I own it either way, I said. We ran it and punched through in record time. He met me at the console afterward. You think like a field lead, he said. I'm not even enlisted. That the only thing that bothers you about it? He asked. I didn't answer. I learned the rhythm of those halls, the way doors sighed, the way coffee tasted wrong after midnight, the way a room full of people can be silent in a dozen different languages of focus. Officers started asking what I saw before they argued about what they thought. Civilians borrowed my notes and left theirs in exchange. No one called me intern. No one needed to. The debrief at the end came as a plain envelope with a thin stack inside. Candidate exceptional. Coordination under stress, high. Pattern acquisition speed, high. Leadership instinct, observed. Recommendation, Tier 2 strategic access. I didn't smile. I let myself sit with the words until they stopped feeling like they belonged to someone else. When I stepped into the hall, my tablet buzzed. One line from Harrington, knew you would. When you're back, you're not standing against the wall. Back at NBVC, the air felt warmer, or maybe that was just the way the guard at the gate looked up and actually saw me. Reyes met me with a grin so big it belonged in another world. Told you, he said, clapping my shoulder. You've got that 1,000-yard brain. Brooks slid a canteen across a table in the war room and didn't bother hiding his approval. Knox watched me from the doorway, arms folded, like a guy who's wrong on purpose until you make him right. So, he said, neutral turning to interested, what did they break and what didn't they? They tried, I said. I didn't crack. He nodded once, a quiet okay. Harrington was bent over satellite stills when I walked in, eyes moving like he was listening for wrong notes on a piano only he could hear. He stood a fraction when he saw me, which on him was a standing ovation. You did well, he said. You gave me the door, I said. He shook his head. You kicked it. He didn't drag it out. There's interest, he said, flipping a folder open. Not just here. A tasking wants a certain kind of mind embedded, unarmed, thinking live, touching systems while rounds exist in the same zip code. Off the books, but clean. You'll get outlines, not orchestras. It's not an order. It's a choice. He let the word sit. Choice. The thing most people pretend they don't have so they can blame the day for what they do. Why me? I asked. Because you don't blink, he said. Because you turn chaos into a checklist and then burn the checklist when it gets in the way. Because you know when to shut up and when to say stop. They didn't give me a week to think. They gave me 3 days, enough to check gear I didn't carry, learn voices I didn't know, and rehearse exits for rooms I had never seen. The team wasn't ours. Different unit, different jokes, same eyes. The first hour they treated me like someone's bright cousin on a tour. The second hour I found a flaw in their exfil route that would have turned an alley into a funnel. Respect arrived without a speech. The night before we lifted, I sat on a bench facing the dark range like it was a river I'd crossed and was about to cross again. Reyes dropped beside me with 2 protein bars and a sigh. You sure you want to be the brain in the room full of bullets? He asked. I don't want to be anything else, I said. He nodded like he knew the answer before he asked. Knox walked past, tapped the bench once like a knuckle knock, and kept going. Brooks set a pouch by my boot. You won't need it, he said, but you'll want it to feel like you're not going in empty. It was a minimal med kit and a cable roll, tools for hands that don't fire but still fight. Harrington found me last. He didn't sit. He stood in front of the range like a guy remembering 100 shoots at once. We're not writing you a myth, he said. We're writing a report we can live with. I nodded. You trust me in there? I asked. No, he said, deadpan, then let the corner of his mouth tilt. I trust you more than that. The rotors were scheduled for dawn. The target wasn't far as the crow flies, but distance measured in risk doesn't care about miles. Long Beach. Industrial docks. Steel and shadow and alarms that wake the ocean. I slept 4 hours, boots by the bed, bag packed twice, mind clear in the way it gets when there are no more decisions to make except the ones that count in real time. When the first gull cried and the horizon turned thin and pale, I stood, shouldered the bag, and headed for the pad where the bird waited with its mouth open to the morning and a mission folded tight inside its noise, because the next step was the point, and I was ready to take it. The rotor wash hit like a wall, salt air and diesel mixing as we lifted off the pad and ran low along the coastline toward Long Beach. The team sat quiet in that way real teams do, helmets bowed, checks done twice, comms checked a third time. I sat between two bodies of muscle and discipline with a tablet strapped to my forearm, cable roll in my cargo pocket, minimal med kit by my boot like Brooks wanted me to have. No rifle. No sidearm. Just a brain expected to move faster than alarms. I felt steady, not brave. Brave is a poster. Steady gets you home. The docks were a grid of orange sodium light and black water. Industrial hum. Stacks of containers like apartment buildings for steel. We set down one block off and moved in under the crane arms while gulls screamed territorial nonsense above the noise. My job started before doors did. I pulled the camera map, tagged the blind arcs, and built a path that kept us in what the angles forgot. A forklift rolled late, off schedule, throwing a glare across the yard that turned a shadow into a tell. We froze in the seam of two containers until it passed and the yard settled back into its machine heartbeat. Target building, a squat warehouse with bad paint and a better security budget. Two panels on the north face, one obvious and one too clean. Obvious is for visitors, clean is for trouble. I cabled into the clean and found a split loop, visible alarm on a normal bus, silent alarm on a buried reed ladder tied to the door frames. If you beat the loud one, the quiet one calls the world. I built a loop back on the loud channel so the system saw healthy heartbeat, then jumped to the reed ladder. The encryption looked expensive and rushed, the kind you buy from people who promise easy without telling you about brittle. I set a timed spoof so every reed thought every door was still and every still matched yesterday. Window, the point man whispered, meaning how long my lie would hold. 7, I said, because I would rather underpromise than fail public. We went on my count. The breach was silent and clean, a hinge that had a bad year, men who had done this too many times to be surprised by anything except maybe boredom. The interior smelled like oil and old sea. I walked the catwalk line, eyes on the tablet, one ear on footsteps, one ear on the way systems hum when they're content. Halfway across we got hit by RF noise that shouldn't have been there this late. Reflections off water, a big ship's radar sweeping wide, I guessed. It made the drone feed hiccup. Hold, I said, then ported the live to a hard line I'd prepped on the fly with a clamp and a cable snaked to a maintenance conduit. Feed went solid. We kept moving. The package sat where Intel said it would sit, flight case, heavy for its size, ugly enough to be important. The team lead snapped the latches, checked the guts, and gave a short nod. 3 out, he said, meaning we were leaving in 3 minutes whether the world agreed or not. That's when the facility did the thing facilities do when you think you've told all the lies you need, they told one back. A maintenance cycle kicked something awake in a subpanel we hadn't touched, and for half a second the silent ladder ticked a change. I saw it because I was watching for the kind of wrong that doesn't blink. Freeze, I said, and they did, mid-step, statues that breathe. I patched a micro shim across the ladder logic using a stripped cable hair and the corner of a foil sticker I peeled off my own tablet, ugly, improvised, effective. The tick flattened. Move, I said, voice low and even. We reached the exit and found the alley colder than we left it. A truck idled where air had been, engine hot on thermal, which meant we weren't the only people working after midnight. 2 silhouettes by the far gate talking in that bore-to-alert cadence that happens when a shift is almost over. Our planned exfil would walk us right through their bark zone. I looked up, catwalks braced to a crane, a manual control panel inside a cage, padlock old and soft. Up, I said, pointing, then went first because trust is easier when the person with the plan moves their own feet. We took the catwalk, hugged steel that stank of salt and age, and reached the crane control. I popped the cage with a twist of metal that used to be a clip and is now lockpick folklore, then woke the panel without waking the yard. The display was pre-digital stubborn. I feathered the levers and rolled a top container 6 inches, then a foot, stacking noise and doubt in a place far from us. Movement draws eyes, especially when it's wrong. The silhouette stopped talking and looked where the container wasn't supposed to be moving. Someone yelled. "Good. Look there." We threaded the catwalk to the far ladder and dropped into a shadow that didn't have a story to tell. Feet on concrete, breath timed with distant engines. 2 minutes, the lead said, case riding a shoulder like fact. We cut east between stacks. A siren coughed once somewhere else, a false positive from my earlier loopback reset hitting the scheduled health check I'd gambled we would beat. It barked and died, and my heart beat out a timing mark that matched the yard lights. At the corner, a security guard stepped into our path from a blind door, the kind of coincidence that makes after-action reports longer. His hand went half up toward a radio. He was 3 steps from speaking. The point man slid past him like water and turned him into a seated, quiet idea. No drama. No noise. No injury we couldn't sign for. We kept moving. The rendezvous block smelled like old fish and hot rubber. The bird wasn't coming to us, we were going to wheels. A van nosed out of a dark cut just as we reached the curb. Doors slid. Bodies flowed in. I was the last one in because my job doesn't end until the loop closes. I killed my spoof clean, poured the system a last sip of yesterday, and tucked the cable back into my pocket like nothing had happened. The van rolled. We didn't speak until the docks were a smear of lights in the rear glass. The lead tapped the case with 2 knuckles like knocking on wood. 7 minutes, 53 seconds door to door, he said. We'll lie and round to 8. Someone chuckled. I let my head touch the seat and stared at my boots until the color came back to the world. Back at NBVC, dawn was a gray line getting ready to be gold. Harrington stood at the edge of the pad with his hands in his pockets, the posture of a man who has watched too many returns to cheer at the right ones. We climbed out, handed off the case, did the quiet checks that mean everyone has skin and thoughts left. He didn't ask for a play-by-play. He looked at me, looked at my hands, then at my eyes the way people look when they're searching for the crack. I shook my head once to say there wasn't one today. He nodded, small and satisfied. Reyes appeared like he'd been orbiting since midnight. So, he asked. We didn't write a myth, I said. We wrote a report we can live with. Knox leaned against a post and gave me that same almost smile from the gauntlet. Okay, he said. Now I'm convinced. Harrington pulled something from his pocket and pressed it into my palm, an unofficial patch operators pass around when a thing matters but paperwork won't capture it. Navy blue, eagle stitched in thread that had seen better lighting. Not regulation, he said. But real. I turned it over once and felt the weight of the last hours land in its small circle. Keep it, he added when I started to hand it back. You earned it. I tucked it into my vest and let the morning wind cool the heat under my skin. The debrief ran short because clean work writes short stories. They took my notes without arguing with them and stamped the right boxes. I walked out into a base that had the same buildings and the same birds and the same ocean, but everything looked bright-edged in that way it does when you've done the thing you said you could do. Harrington caught me by the steps of the war room. This changes what people ask of you, he said. It should change what you ask of yourself. He didn't tell me what to want. He never does. He just points at doors and lets me decide which ones to break my shoulder on. I looked past him at the range, the catwalk, the sky clearing into a day nobody had earned yet, and felt the answer arrive quiet and certain. I wanted a seat in rooms where the first drafts of safety get written, not just the edits after. I wanted a commission that meant responsibility had a name and it was mine. I took a breath, steadied it, and knew the next step wasn't a mystery at all. The base looked the same gulls, same salt on the wind, but my lane through it had changed. Harrington didn't push. He never does. He just walked with me to the war room and set 2 folders on the table like 2 doors. One read Special Advisory, Civilian. The other read Direct Commission, Officer Accession. He tapped the first. You keep your edges, choose your targets, come and go. He tapped the second. You wear it. You own it. Different weight. I looked at both and heard my father's old rule in my head, make the decision that costs you something, because the free ones don't hold under load. Reyes slid in with coffee that tasted like last night. If you're asking, he said, I vote for the one that gets you in the room when the whiteboard is still blank. Knox leaned on the doorway with that permanent half-challenge in his eyes. Uniform changes who looks at you and how, he said. Make sure it doesn't change who you are. Brooks didn't sit. He stood where range staff stand, close enough to correct, far enough to let you move. Title or no title, he said, responsibility finds people who don't hide. Decide how you want it to find you. I took the commission folder and read it twice, slow. The words weren't romantic. They were simple and exacting. Service. Duty. Authority matched to accountability. Expectations spelled out in black print, no mystery in the terms. I felt calm reading it, the same calm I get right before a shot breaks, present, narrow, right-sized. Harrington watched my face the way he watches a timeline. Whatever you choose, he said, you already proved you belong. I nodded. I know. I just want the belonging to mean something when the door shuts. The next days were meetings that didn't feel like meetings, short rooms with people who ask clean questions and don't waste your time. One asked what I learned from being wrong in week 2 of the integration course. I answered without dressing it up. Fix your trust model faster than your ego, I said. Another asked what I fear most. False confidence, I said. It makes you deaf. A third asked what I'd change on the docks if I could rerun it. Start the crane earlier, I said. I got lucky with the timing. Next time I'll make my own luck. In between, I walked the range because that's where my thinking fits. Reyes found me staring at the berm. You ready for people to salute you? He asked, teasing but not really. I'm ready to salute the work, I said. He handed me a protein bar like a medal. Just don't let them put you in a room so far from the ground you forget how the dust smells. Knox came by later and said nothing for a full minute, which was its own kind of speech. Then, I was wrong about you. I shook my head. You were careful about me. He smirked. Don't get soft on me now. Brooks laid a uniform bag on a chair and tapped the plastic. Try it on, he said. Not for the mirror. For the weight. The fabric felt like rules made tangible. The name tape said Walker in block letters that didn't care about history. Rank felt like a loan you pay back every day you wear it. I stood and breathed with it on until the nerves in my shoulders got the message that this wasn't theater. That night I sent my mother a short message because long ones felt like hedging. I told her I'd been offered a commission, that it wasn't about costumes or salutes, that it was about being where decisions start. She wrote back one line, your father would say, make sure your yes means yes. I stared at that until the screen dimmed and then went dark. Harrington scheduled a final brief with the captain who oversaw the pipeline. The room was cool and bright and empty of drama. The captain reviewed my packet without looking surprised. You understand unusual paths come with unusual scrutiny, he said. They should, I answered. You understand this is not a scholarship. It's a responsibility. That's why I'm here. He closed the folder. Your sponsor speaks highly, he said, tilting his chin toward Harrington. He doesn't hand that out. Harrington didn't move. He didn't have to. They gave me 24 hours to sleep on it, I used 2 and spent the rest walking the perimeter and letting the idea settle in my bones. I stopped at the catwalk, at the target line, at the spot where he'd handed me the rifle the first time and didn't call it a test. I remembered the cold of the ice bath, the burn in my legs on the sled drag, the moment on the docks when the reed ladder twitched and I told 5 men to freeze and they did because my voice sounded like it belonged there. All of it added up to one thing: I didn't want proximity anymore. I wanted ownership. Morning came clean. The base smelled like sun on steel. I found Harrington by the steps to the war room. "I'm going to say yes," I said. He searched my face for doubt and found none. "Then say it loud," he said. "And say it to the right people." Reyes trailed us to the admin building and peeled off at the door with a two-finger salute that didn't bother pretending to be formal. Knox stayed outside and leaned on the rail like a bouncer for fate. Brooks waited at the end of the hall with a pen that clicks exactly once. The commissioning panel was a row of uniforms who looked like decisions for a living. They didn't grandstand. They asked for clarity. They got it. One asked what I'd do the first time someone tells me no in a room where I'm the junior by 20 years. "Ask better questions," I said. "If no still stands, I'll make the plan that survives it." Another asked why the Navy and not a contractor badge with less limitation. "Because limits make you creative," I said. "And because the standard is clearer when you carry it." They read the oath. I listened with the same attention I give a safety brief before live fire, words that matter because they carry consequence. I thought about the kid who stapled targets and wanted to disappear into competence. I thought about the woman on a catwalk in a dockyard moving steel by inches to draw eyes away from the truth. Both of those people stood with me in that room. Neither of them wanted an easy story. Harrington didn't say anything while they processed the last signatures. He stood behind me like a fixed point on a map. When the captain returned, he didn't make a speech. He held the paper that made the choice real. "Do you accept this commission willingly, knowing what it means?" he said. The room got very small and very quiet in a good way, the kind where only the right things exist. I raised my right hand and said, "I do." The words left my mouth clean and steady, and the room moved on like it was built to catch moments exactly like that. Papers changed hands. Pens clicked. The captain nodded once and the panel stood, business finished without applause. Harrington didn't step in front of me or clap my shoulder. He just waited until the door shut behind the last uniform and then let the smallest smile show. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant," he said. Hearing it out loud landed like weight in the best way, something you carry on purpose. They gave me a uniform that fit because Brooks had done the quiet work of making sure it would. Reyes met me outside the admin building with 2 coffees and an expression that was half proud, half trouble. "Don't start speaking in bullet points," he said. "I like my walker with verbs." Knox studied the name tape and the bars and gave a single nod that said he'd expected this and also that he'd be watching. "Rank's a tool," he said. "Use it like one." We walked to the war room together, and for the first time I didn't stand against the wall. Harrington pointed to a chair next to his and left no space for doubt. The brief hit on 3 problems, none of them theatrical: a timing gap in port security drills, a software update that would break a useful workaround, a partner unit's plan that hinged on a bad assumption. I didn't wait to be called. I asked for the last 60 days of camera health checks, pulled the cadence, and showed how small failures always bunched at shift change. The fix wasn't hero work. It was adjusting maintenance windows and staggering start times by 9 minutes. Boring saves lives more often than exciting. On the software update, I asked the vendor rep to explain their rollback plan in complete sentences. They didn't have one until we wrote it for them. On the partner plan, I put their maps on our screens and ran their timeline against real human speed. The flaw showed itself. We rewrote the approach in 10 minutes with 2 questions and 1 hard no. No one argued. That was new. At lunch, I ate in the same spot on the tailgate because new rank didn't change what made food taste like food. A kid in intern grays walked past with a coil of tape and that look I knew too well, the one you wear when you're trying to be useful and invisible at the same time. "Hey," I said. He froze. "When the line calls clear, walk the targets like you own the ground. And keep your head up when the winds cross," I added because no one had told me that when I needed it. He nodded fast, eyes wide. Yes, ma'am. It's Sam, I said. Ma'am is for when I mess up. The afternoon went to paperwork and access. Clearances don't feel glamorous when you're the one reading the rules. They feel like guardrails that keep the road from turning into a cliff. I signed what needed signing and refused to sign one thing until a clause got fixed. Harrington didn't interfere. He watched me choose what to own. Reyes slid a patch across the table, same navy blue, same stitched eagle, different inscription. This one is regulation, he said, deadpan. Try not to lose it in the wash. Brooks handed over a slim binder labeled expectations. Not for their sake, he said, tapping the cover. For yours. It's easier to meet a standard when you can point to it. Toward evening, the range pulled like gravity. I walked there without deciding to, boots finding the gravel path to Point Magoo because that's where the story started and I wanted to see what it looked like from the other end. The light went gold over the berms. Steel smelled like heat leaving. Harrington stood in my old spot, not saying anything to anyone, just being the fixed point he always was. He saw me and lifted the M4 by the handguard, the same one he trusted me with when I was nobody. He didn't offer it across the firing line this time. He handed it to me on the safe side, a quiet change with meaning. Properly now, he said. I shouldered it and felt the old instructions settle in their new place. Breathe. Press. Follow through. The string landed clean because the fundamentals don't care about titles. Knox counted the holes and shook his head like superstition had finally given up. Reyes whistled under his breath, the same way someone had that first day, like he was watching a story fold back on itself and come out better. Brooks said nothing, which on him meant yes. We walked the line and picked up brass together, because even officers can do simple work with their own hands. You know this doesn't make anything easier, Harrington said. It makes the right things harder. That's why it feels right, I said. He glanced at the catwalk, at the hills, at the target backs torn and stapled. You planning to sit in the room and forget the ground? No, I said, and meant it. I plan to sit in the room and remember the ground. My mother called while the sun dropped, her voice full in that careful way she gets when she's making space for me to be honest. I told her I'd taken the commission. She didn't cry. She said, make sure your yes keeps meaning yes. I promised her it would, and new promises only count if you collect them daily. After we hung up, I wrote a short note to myself on a plain card, don't blink. Ask better questions. Own the plan. Then I slid it into the front of the binder Brooks had given me where I'd see it before every brief. The next morning started earlier because it had to. I stood at the edge of a new table with a map of a place I hadn't been yet and a timeline no one trusted yet and a team that would need me to be steady more than loud. We built options and killed 3 of them for the right reasons. We kept one. I didn't make speeches. I made assignments. Reyes took comms integration. Knox took route discipline. Brooks ran a red team pass on our own assumptions and poked holes until the plan stopped leaking. Harrington watched the flow and only stepped in when he needed to shift weight. He still didn't tell me what to want. He didn't have to. Before wheels up, I walked the intern lane one more time. The kid from yesterday stood with a stapler and the look of someone trying to earn a first yes. Range clear, someone called. He jogged forward, shoulders square. I watched his hands on the paper, the way he kept his fingers away from the stapler line. He looked back once, not for permission, just to check if anyone saw him. I raised a hand, just a small signal. I see you. Do the work. He turned back to the target and finished clean. The pad smelled like heat and fuel again, the same as it always does before you lift into decisions you can't rehearse all the way. I climbed in and strapped down, tablet ready, brain quiet. Harrington leaned in through the door and spoke low so only I could hear. You earned the seat, he said. Now keep earning it. I nodded. The rotors wound up. The horizon thinned into a line you could balance a coin on. We rose, and the base slid small beneath us, range, catwalk, war room, all of it the same and not the same. People talk about moments that change everything like lightning. This wasn't lightning. It was a switch flipped one click at a time until the room was bright enough to do the work. I looked out at the water and felt the weight of the patch on my chest and the oath in my mouth and the steady in my hands. The story didn't end with a shot or a salute. It ended where the next one always begins, with responsibility, taken on purpose, carried forward without blinking.